Let's now test this simple application on Android. To do so, there is a step that's required once on Android, which is different than iOS, and that step is to create a device emulator. You can also plug in an actual Android device and test on that, and that's actually a much better option if you have an Android device. But if you don't, an emulator is good enough. Also, an emulator allows you to test your application on many different Android devices with many different screens, for example. To create a device emulator, we need to open up Android Studio, and we need to start a new Android Studio project. We can actually open our existing Android Studio project, but I'd recommend against that because sometimes Android Studio updates your project without you realizing it. And we really just need a dummy application to get to the menu where we can launch the Android AVD Manager. So go ahead and just create a default application with all default options. And once you're inside the full Android Studio menu, you want this icon here, the AVD Manager. Sometimes you can also access it via Tools, Android, AVD Manager. So I have one virtual device pre-configured, which is running on Android 8. However, for React Native, we need to create a new virtual device that's running on Android 6. So click on Create Virtual Device, and I'll go ahead and pick Pixel. Click Next. And when the tool asks you about a system image, you want to pick Marshmallow. Now it looks like I need to download that, so just go ahead and do that. It's actually weird because I remember we did download that during the installation. But if you see a download link next to Marshmallow, just go ahead and click it. When you click on Marshmallow now, you can go ahead and click Next. And this window is going to ask you about some configuration here, the orientation and many other things. Let's just use the defaults, click Finish, and you should see the new device right here, which is running on Android 6. Go ahead and launch this virtual device by clicking on this play icon here. And here is my Android emulator ready to run. To run the project for Android, first, make sure that you terminate the packager instance if it's still running. Then you might need to run this command, npm start -- reset cache. This is usually a good command to try first if you run into weird problems. I'm going to kill the packager one more time, and then run the command that you need to run the project on Android, which is React Native run Android. This will start the packager again, but it will be compiling the project for Android. When the command is done, you'll see the application loading in the emulator, and you'll see the exact same Welcome to React Native screen. Now, in my project here, which was generated on React Native 0.46, I still have an index.ios.js and index.android.js. If you generated your project on React Native 0.49 or higher, you'll only have an index.js file that should work for both platforms. However, an Android.js extension in your nested files is something that React Native will understand, and it will choose that file first if it exists when running the project on Android. This allows you to have custom code for both Android and iOS when needed. So I'll do a few changes in my index.android.js here. And to reload the Android app in the emulator, you can double press the R key. If you want to bring in the developer menu, you can press Command M. So let's go ahead and enable live reload, test that. And that seems to be working. If the application crashed, you can restart the command, or you can find it in the menu. So just click on this Android menu button, and you can see the application here somewhere. So just double click that, and that should reload the application. You can also normally force close an application just like you do in a normal phone. Very good. So I usually just run one simulator, just the iOS simulator, and do everything in iOS. And once I implement a good phase, I'll switch gears and test things on Android and make things work on Android. So I'll go ahead and just close this emulator and go back to testing with iOS only. You might need to restart the React Native packager to get things to run again on the iOS simulator. In the next video, we'll get a very basic introduction on using styles with React Native components.